check, check, check. Check, check. Check, 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 1, 2, check, 1, check, check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2, check, 1, check, check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2, check, 1, check, check, 1, 2. Check, check. Check, check.
We're just giving them like strategic and organizing.
I need it from rescues. They saw you coming in. Take me away.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, so
Yeah, are you headed to some? Wait, this is so
yes,
fast.
not.
Okay, good. Yeah. So that'll be a thing.
Christmas presents for nails
Good.
that I need.
How are you doing?
You're doing great. We're sort of pushing the common sense limit.
I know, I try to get people to do that.
It's so good for us.
Trust.
It's working out well. I think the weather is supposed to increasingly improve. Hi, Brooke. I'm Jackie. Nice to see you.
Heard you speak and I heard about you through Ed Briscoe. Or you guys meet? Yeah.
So I met with them almost 4 years ago.
Check, check. Check, check, 1, 2, check, 1.
Where would that be based?
It's on Temple Santa Fe. And that'll buy us about a year, and then we'll generate new manufacturing facilities and therefore
Check, check, 1, check, 1.
just taking a bit of a breather from fundraising at the moment before I get back out there and do it all over
I
again.
know how it is, man. They never end. That's what's so. Yeah.
I either hope to someday have people in the organization
Testing. All right. Hey, everyone. If you can hear me and you're sitting in the back, let's try to move up closer.
Hello.
We want to make sure we're as warm and cozy as possible on this chilly Monday to start off Startup Week. So thank you for the people who are moving closer. That's awesome. At Peak Change, we have a policy that we sit in the front row. So I'm just encouraging everyone to join us in that. So thanks. All right, so to kick things off, I am Emily Winslow. I'm here representing Peak Change. I'm going to be moderating the panel today. Peak Change is an impact investing advisory firm based here in Denver, Colorado. We work to strengthen relationships between investors and entrepreneurs and really building the ecosystem to support honest and transparent communications. So I want to start off before I introduce the panel by making sure we have a sense of who's in the room to help our panelists kind of figure out how to best tailor their responses. So can you raise your hand if you're just learning about impact investing for the first time this week? Raise them high. Awesome. Welcome. Raise your hand if you've heard of impact investing, but you don't really know that much about it and you're just hearing it's something that's sexy. Even better. Okay. Now here's the hard part. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Colorado Impact Fund. Keep it up. Okay. Now I'm going to throw out some terms that are pretty familiar to the folks on stage, but just to see the level of sophistication here in the audience. Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of social impact bonds. Keep them up, okay? We're going to see how long we can keep these hands up for. Have you heard of donor advised funds? If you haven't, put your hands down. Guarantor models? Revenue or royalty-based financing? Okay. ESOP? Structured exits? All right, great. Okay. So that's really helpful to us up here in terms of our conversation, so thanks for that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Brooke on the end, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. In terms of your introduction, name, job, organization, why you give a shit, or what your first introduction to impact investing was.
Hi, my name's Brooke Eddy, and I'm the founder of Bhakti Chai. And I started Bhakti as a mission-driven company about 10 years ago. And at that point, I didn't know that there was something called impact investing. There was nothing about B Corp at that time. For me, it was my background in social policy that really wanted to come together with my desire to have a product based on my time in India. So while in India, I was there studying a movement based on the word bhakti, which means devotion through social action. So while I was there, I was tasting a lot of amazing chai and started to make my own at home and realized that there was a hole in the market for fresh, craft brewed, spicy chai. So I made it with sustainable ingredients, wanted to make sure it was fair trade, organic, non-GMO, and really built a company from very humble beginnings, bootstrapped my way through until I found some very generous angel investors in Boulder to help me continue to grow. And at that point, really realized that this small little mission, at that point, we'd given about $200,000 away to charitable nonprofits, supporting women and girls primarily. And I really wanted to continue that path. And so we were able to grow the company, grow our giving, become a certified B Corporation, which means that we were doing good for the sourcing of our ingredients, the people that were picking tea leaves in India, making sure we were taking care of our employees, and really just bringing this holistic approach to business because we felt that there was a way that we could be smarter in business and also take care of our community. And as we grew, we didn't know that there was going to be private equity out there, like the Colorado Impact Fund, that really agreed with what we were doing and agreed with our mission. So luckily, we built a company with these great ideas and these great values, and then we could find funding to help us continue to grow and continue to grow Bhakti.
We'll go down the line, and Jeremy, you can go next and tell us a little bit about yourself and NotEat.
Will do. I'm Jeremy Priest. I'm one of the co-founders of NotEat, and I want to just apologize quickly for taking about 10 minutes of your time to talk to a necktie salesman today. I know that wasn't quite what you guys had in mind. But I promise the business model is much more meaningful than the consumer product that we originally created the business to create. Back in 2013, was volunteering with resettled refugees, working specifically with women resettled refugees through a skills training program. And I was just recognizing that a lot of refugees are having an incredibly difficult time, especially women, attaining economic self-sufficiency and overcoming a lot of the barriers to employment. If you don't speak English, if you have 4 kids and are a single mother, how is it that you can actually get sustainable employment? So with only about $500 and frustration kind of with the nonprofit model and the success in creating employment opportunities for women graduating from a training program teaching sewing skills here in Denver, my partner and I started deconstructing ties and started building a consumer brand around completely customizable, sustainably produced, ethically manufactured goods here in Denver. And so over the last 4 years or so, we've created about 22 jobs, 10 of which are for resettled refugees full-time. Our average pay is about $17 an hour for the refugee staff, with about 30 days paid time off. And other benefits for tuition reimbursement or other things, and we're about to launch health and dental and vision for them. So now we're really thinking much larger. How is it that we can diversify and take all of the gains that we've learned from building the e-commerce business, building the manufacturing facility, building the textile printing capabilities, and expand our brand out to be able to create the next wave of job creation within that. We're also focusing on just creating better jobs and cross-training the refugee staff and integrating them more fully into the business model. So teaching some of them client-facing graphic design skills because they have awesome pattern making experience that is fundamentally different than any of our designers, domestic designers. And then ultimately, those that have been sewing for 20 or 30 years, how is it, do we actually create management roles for them and product development, product creation, supervision, training, things like that. So really focusing on how we can continue to positively impact the refugee community and specifically the most disadvantaged within that community, which are certainly single mothers and refugee women.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to our funders on the panel. Luis, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your work with Gary and how you first came to impact investing or why you give a damn?
Sure. And I think thank you for being in this conversation. I think it's always interesting that sometimes we are here and sometimes we are there. So it's exciting to tell you a little bit about our work, but we hope that we learn also through your questions some of the interesting topics that you would like us to cover. Luis Duarte, I'm an investment director with Gary Community Investments. Our organization, which includes the Piton Foundation, has been around for about 60 years, trying to support low-income children and their families in Colorado. And one of the things that we do is we look for-profit and non-profit opportunities or philanthropic opportunities to help advance the lives of those most vulnerable in the state of Colorado. It's an interesting question about how I came in to learn about impact investing, because I think I came in to learn the term later on my life when I was a fellow at the Unreasonable Institute, bunch of crazy people getting together and kind of going through Boulder and having parties. Just was a great time. No, they do much more than that, but I think it was really when I was little, and I had the opportunity to be a part-time missionary supporting rural communities in Mexico, and one of the things that I was always impressed by was when I was maybe about 12 years old, we were in this little town in northern rural Mexico, and they had a huge operation in extracting minerals and chopping wood, and it was very interesting to see people supporting with philanthropic dollars all the needs of the employees, but then the same people also providing investment capital for the company to provide even more opportunities for those families. So I think the concept I have learned since I was little, but then it wasn't until I was an entrepreneur and I was on kind of Jeremy's and Brooks' shoes, running my own recycling company, that I stumbled upon the word social entrepreneurship and impact investing.
Thank you. And Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Colorado Impact Fund.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be with this group. This group has been doing social entrepreneurship for a lot longer than I have, and I've learned a lot from all three of these great people, and just really happy to be a part of the conversation and to be part of this impact investing community. We launched the Colorado Impact Fund about 3 years ago. It's a venture capital firm based here in Denver, and our mission is to support Colorado companies, deliver market rate returns to our investors, and also positive community impact. So the way to think about us is we underwrite like any other venture capital firm would, but we have this impact screen layered over top. And the way we think about impact is really in 4 categories. One is improving community health. So that could be value-based healthcare products or services, companies that are providing services in underserved communities, companies that are helping to promote healthy lifestyles and wellness. The second category is education. A lot of what we look at are technologies that are making teachers' lives easier, improving student performance. And we've also gotten quite passionate about workforce development. So alternative education models that are helping people transition from jobs that may not be as connected to the modern economy and may not have a lot of upward mobility to much more modern jobs where people can really participate in a lot of the innovation that's happening all around us. Third bucket is conservation of natural resources and clean energy. That one's pretty self-explanatory. You've got the Rocky Mountain Institute here. You've got the National Renewable Energy Labs here. You've got a big energy infrastructure trying to get cleaner and more efficient, so there's a lot of deal flow, a lot of innovation in that area here in Colorado. Fourth bucket is facilitating economic development. And for us, that means a couple things. Number one, it means how do we help wonderful IP that's coming out of our universities get commercialized? Our capital in this state is very focused on software and hardware, and there's not a lot of capital for other kinds of innovations. Second thing is supporting underserved founders and entrepreneurs. Only 2% of venture capital backs women entrepreneurs. I mean, that is insane. So we want to support people like Brooke, who are starting companies, and other women that are out there trying to start businesses. And then also, we want to really support the premier industry groups here in Colorado and turn them into the best in the country. What attracted me to this is I grew up here in Colorado, and this is a purely community fund. This is capital from Colorado investors going into Colorado companies to do good. I worked in traditional private equity, and this model just seems so innovative to me. And now that I've been doing it for 4 years, I couldn't believe more strongly in what we're trying to accomplish and others are trying to accomplish. I really think it can make a huge difference. And most of the companies that we're investing in, the mission part of the business that these great entrepreneurs have created is the secret sauce to what they do. It gives them a competitive advantage. So our philosophy is we think we can do better than other firms who aren't focused on this, and we believe strongly in that. So.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to ask a couple questions of the entire panel, and then I'm going to ask a few questions of the funders and then also of the entrepreneurs, and then we'll open it up because I'm sure there are tons of questions you're ready to hit our panelists with. So for the first question, we've touched on it a little bit, but what's so special about impact investing here in Colorado? Let's just start it off with a bang.
Colorado is a community that we have so many smart folks. We have so many people that care about the community, about the environment, about each other. One of the first comments that I have been here in this community for 5 years, but my second son was born here, so I really feel connected to this place now. And one of the first comments that I got as an advice from someone from Colorado, they said, Luis, you are coming into a community that if you add value to the community will embrace you. And if you screw up, the community will kick you out. I think that's very interesting, right? I lived in multiple cities in Germany, a couple of cities here in the States, different cities in Mexico, and I have never felt that. I think what impact investing does in Colorado is that everybody's willing to share contacts, everybody's willing to share their own Rolodex to actually help each other. I think the other thing that it's interesting in Colorado is we have a base of very interesting investors, not only on the venture capital side, on the angel side, but also foundations that are thinking, how do I put my money to work, not only at the philanthropic side, but also our endowment and our corpus to help advance our mission. And I think that's very unique to this place.
I think just the growth that I've seen in the last 5 years within the social impact investing space has been really promising. Foundations considering coming off the sidelines and making investments in for-profit entities is and would be a massive transformation in a lot of enterprises to get terms, appropriate terms for the business model. I think there's already, and there has been a lot of people who have a decade or more of impact investing. I don't know if they would have called it that or were organized in the way in which Colorado is now, but it's incredibly exciting to see everyone talking about wanting to work for social enterprises, those talking about ways to transform access to capital for social enterprises, and for more social enterprises to just be able to actually be developed and to prosper as a function of sort of those macroeconomic factors changing the landscape and people's ability and decisions and how they build a business that can succeed and can thrive. So I have no doubt that Colorado is moving in the right direction. We're certainly not where we need to be to solve a lot of problems and to actually create an enormous amount of innovation, but all the signs are moving in the right direction. People are talking about it in the right terms and are sincerely interested in rethinking the structure of social enterprise and social enterprise investing.
I really see this as Colorado being a beacon of light and hope, of meaning and purpose that this country really needs right now. And the political climate that's happening where there isn't a lot of meaning and purpose and compassion, I feel like Colorado has that, and we're standing up saying, no, business can be different. We can work together. We can make the top line and the bottom line and the community and employees and the environment all be shareholders. And it's refreshing to live here and be a part of a community that does that. And there's organizations like Unreasonable Institute, you know, that started over 10 years ago that was starting the movement of social enterprise entrepreneurs. And as people get to see, wow, you can actually make money being a social entrepreneur. You can make a living and you can help your investors make a living and you can help your employees raise above the bar of a living wage. I mean, it just makes sense that this should be the model. And I look forward to a day, you know, in the next coming years where that's just the business model.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is Colorado, as everybody has said, is very passionate about a lot of these social issues that we're talking about. But I think people in Colorado are also very practical. You know, we think about how are we going to solve these issues in the long term, and I think people here realize that we have to tackle these issues in the most sustainable way, which is capitalized, you know, typically by private capital or public and private partnerships, where that entity can survive without assistance, can sustain on its own. And I think because of that practicality, a lot of people are drawn to these models here in Colorado, maybe more so than other places.
And then from your different perspectives, what advice do you have for impact-driven social entrepreneurs that are looking to raise capital in this field, particularly as Colorado is growing, as people are moving here to become entrepreneurs, people are moving here to be investors in this space? What are you kind of seeing, and based on where you are now, what advice do you have? Or what do you wish maybe you had known is a better way of phrasing it too.
I think it's really creating that sustainable business model. I think, you know, to attract capital, and I think in this category or any category, from, you know, really good investors, I think you want to be able to create a model that's scalable. And I think sometimes on the impact side, that scalability isn't always top of mind. And for investors like us, who are going to demand a market rate return, you know, we're going to have to see the ability of that company to probably scale not just in Colorado but outside of Colorado. So to me, scalability around your mission-driven business is the key.
Certainly agree on that. And you know, it's very frustrating when there are entities that fund impact, but your business isn't quite as scalable or isn't able to grow at the rate that actually unlocks access to the capital that organizations designed to provide to this sector can't even provision. I think scalability of impact is ultimately what I would encourage people to think about from the very beginning, because even if the business isn't scalable, is creating 10 jobs here in Denver enough for you to keep doing what you're so impassioned about, or is it going to cause you to leave the organization and find a new way to create impact or to contribute in a bigger way? So setting forth a couple different tracks for the social ethos or the social mission of the company. For us, it's about sustainability. It's about corporate governance. A lot of the things that are sort of represented across the B Corp certification. How is it that we can participate in economic development and creating opportunities for a disadvantaged portion of the workforce? But if we're not making progress on that, how is it that we can actually make progress on the sustainability or the inputs or the other portions of the business that we can be proud of at that time when we're not actually creating new jobs or we're not actually hiring because of things outside of our control? So I always just recommend layering the impact, making sure that it's about more than just one thing, and ultimately making sure that you and your team are all on the same page about the impact that you are having and what the limitations or scale of that might be. But for us, it's 10 Jobs was about creating a system and translating that vision and that model to other apparel manufacturers. Now we're thinking about how is it we can create international manufacturing facilities to serve other markets and to create jobs closer to war for resettled refugees. So the end goal doesn't have to be so clear so much as your team all has to constantly be wanting to expand that impact and seek ways to unlock more impact.
For entrepreneurs in the room, I would say setting up metrics early. That's something we didn't do early enough. We felt like, we were buying fair trade, non-GMO, organic, we were taking care of employees, we were giving to nonprofits that support women and girls, but we didn't measure it in a way that then we could track it, and we just started doing that about 3 years ago, and we call it our consciousness metric. And basically, we always want to be doing better. So even we could just sit back and say, oh, we're mission driven, we're doing this, but we've said, no, we can always do better. And so how we can do that now, we can measure that is through our B Corp assessment, which basically every 2 years when you're reassessed, we want to make sure that that score keeps going higher. And I think looking for funding, if you have something early to say, look at what we've been doing. An example for us is we couldn't give paternity pay early on, but we gave maternity leave early on. And then when we could afford it, we wanted to increase and be able to give paternity pay. And we had, our brewers in our brewery who brew tea are primarily men, and when they started to get married and have kids, they could have paid time off as paternity leave. And it wasn't something we could do at the beginning, but we knew we wanted to grow and keep having that consciousness level go up. So as much as you can measure that, I think, investors are looking for those metrics.
There's a lot of advices I think that that are out there. I think so. I'm looking at the audience and I see Chris and I see Keith and I see Dave and there's so much talent in this community that for all of you that are at the beginning stages of your entity, tap into that community, ask for help. There's so many people that will be willing to help and have whatever skill you're looking for to add. It's so important for each one of us to invest in the management team and the talent and really understand who's backing these ideas. So that's one. The second thing, to Brooke's point, I think it's about metrics and it's also about benchmarks. What do you need to do from here to here in order to be able to tap into a different pool of capital? And if you're looking for grants, and if you're looking for more of kind of soft capital, then those metrics on the social impact side need to be crystal clear. And if you don't have it crystal clear, ask. Go to the funders and say, what are you looking for? And then start building a plan to actually deliver on those. The last thing I'll say is, when you're starting a company, you usually don't know how investors are thinking, and you sometimes confuse angel investors with seed funds, with venture capital funds, with private equity. Educate yourself on who are you asking money from, and really understand what's driving them, what values are they kind of seeking, understand all the different capitals that are out there. So when you're having a conversation with Ryan or somebody else, you really understand what you're asking for, because so many times, if you know the model behind the capital, you can go to Ryan and say, Ryan, I know that I'm early for you guys, can you introduce me to someone that can help me bridge that? And what do I need to do in order to get there? So people are always willing to give you advice, so don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I'd say one other thing. Make your mission and your impact strategy your competitive advantage. Because if you're not taking advantage of all this great work that you're doing to give yourself an edge in the marketplace, then you're doing your impact and your mission a disservice. I think about Brooke. Brooke makes an incredible product. It's the best chai in the marketplace by far.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree.
Try it if you haven't already.
But in many ways, the magic of what Brooke has done is every time somebody grabs that product, they know they're a part of something bigger, and it creates this stickiness with her customers, this loyal and devoted following that is really hard to replicate with just traditional brand marketing. And so what attracted us so much to Brooke and her story was it really was that competitive advantage that she created with all the impact she's doing. So that's the magic of this whole category to me, is connecting the impact to your differentiation in your marketplace. And if you can do that, you can really win.
So in talking to the entrepreneurs on the panel, knowing that at different stages of your business, you've had to take different types of capital, wanting to talk about how alternative capital solutions have helped you solve business challenges and potentially where you've learned some crucial lessons about the types of capital that you've taken at that time, in terms of using different financial instruments at the appropriate time with your businesses. And maybe, Brooke, you can talk a little bit more about your relationship with the Colorado Impact Fund.
Careful.
Candidly.
We started out, bringing in very small angels in the Boulder area to grow. And as we continued to grow, we needed more angel investors. And we kind of ran through all of them in Boulder and Denver and needed to go outside of Colorado. And so one thing that I was really thankful for is Circle Up. It's a platform that was able to connect me to other angel investors outside of Colorado. And it was a really efficient way for those of you entrepreneurs who are raising capital. It takes up sometimes 80% of your time while you're also trying to innovate and market and run a company and hire employees and do everything else you're trying to do. So Circle Up was something that was efficient in raising capital. So I highly recommend that. We also did some factoring with 2to-be, which was something that was really necessary for us at that time because we were growing so quickly and our distributors were waiting so long to pay us that there was such a gap in how we could grow and how we could manage our cash flow. So that was something that in that time of our history we really had to do, and they were an amazing partner. And I highly recommend, those relationships. RSF is another socially conscious enterprise that we worked with that, again, when I started, we were banking at a credit union. And a lot of angel investors were like, you can't be at a credit union. They're get out of a credit union. And so, but we stayed with that relationship for a long time. And I feel like wherever we went for those solutions, it was the people and their values and their background that we really connected with. And then at that point, as I said before, I didn't even know that there was impact investing. So I wasn't creating this company hoping that CIF would invest. I had never heard of them, and they were just starting. But we were doing everything right that we kind of fit into this perfect example of what they were looking for and what we were looking for, because we outgrew angel investment. We really needed capital quickly to take our national brand to another level. And so it was just a blessing to know them, have them come on board, and really be partners. We talked to a lot of different private equity people before, and it was a different vibe. And so to be in a room with people who really got your mission, and it wasn't just greenwashing or lip service, it was really valuing the proposition of what we were doing for the community and what we were doing for our products and our marketplace, is so refreshing.
I think for our business model, and this is highly tailored to what it is you sell, what type of funding you need to buy what, and whether or not you have credit, and whether or not you have profits, and everything else. But we started with crowdfunding because we only had $500 and we wanted to test the feasibility of the idea. And we weren't at the point where we were employing refugees, so we weren't looking for impact-specific investors. We were looking for something that would be non-dilutive, that would be democratized and easily accessible. So we started with crowdfunding, and then shortly thereafter, we raised about $25,000, and it wasn't enough. It was just enough to cause us to be working for the company unpaid for like a year straight. Then we realized at that time how much money we could save by actually bringing in the textile printing equipment. And so we went to a lender here in town, Colorado Enterprise Fund, very similar to Axion, Colorado Lending Source, some of the earlier stage entities that will look at you and will give you some waivers from those circumstances. They'll give you consideration as to why you might not have great credit, or why you don't have collateral, or why this might be your first loan ever. And so they gave us a $10,000 loan, and then we paid it on time. They gave us a $100,000 loan. And then we were able to cut our costs and kind of get to the next stage. And then some things just happen by chance. If you just keep talking about what you're passionate about, people tell you who it is that you need to go talk to. And I just kept talking about hiring refugees and what we wanted to do. And somebody came in and said, you need to talk to this man, Ed Briscoe, who funds social enterprises that have employment-based models inherently in their business model. And so we got an equity investment. Then we realized that the valuation, we couldn't continue to do that, or we wouldn't have a company left. And so we couldn't come to a valuation with anyone that we believed the future value. Everyone else is like, why would we invest in a necktie company? And so we had to constantly refine the model and actually prove to people that there was a market opportunity in what otherwise had become an obsolete product. And slowly, by actually generating our own revenue and breaking into the millions and shipping 60,000 units, we've proven that there is a market opportunity for that product, and the way in which we approach that can now be applied. So now we're looking really into the future to Series A raise or to other types of investment vehicles that will allow us to really take the business to the next step, and to build world-class manufacturing facilities, and to actually return production of this product and other custom products to this country. But sort of along the way, we've certainly failed probably 90% of the time in asking for money, and we're successful 10% of the time. But what really is the burden on that is if you don't have everyone in your organization to run the organization when you're not there, your time, the opportunity cost of your time out raising money is at the sacrifice of you actually being able to get your entity profitable sooner. So in hindsight, I wish I would have spent a lot more time focusing on the actual enterprise and making sure that operations were generating profits, because that would have allowed me to get funding on the terms that I wanted much sooner. But I actually wanted to accelerate everything much faster and believed in it already, even when it hadn't generated profits, and I was outselling that. But some foundations we've negotiated with, 11 months of due diligence. I've negotiated with a dozen foundations. That's months and months of time that has gone from my schedule, and that the actual entity itself is kind of suffering and stalling because we don't have the budget to have the right management, and I'm out all the time trying to raise money, and the company isn't in the right position for that money to be available. So it's certainly not easy to raise money as a social enterprise. I think, as Ryan said, it's like market rate returns and impact. That's probably more criteria than traditional investing. So it isn't, nobody gives you money because you're doing the right thing. It actually gets even harder to raise money given those circumstances.
Just a quick note. One of the reasons that I decided to join Garrett Community Investments was because I made a very bad decision when I was an entrepreneur, and I was desperate for capital, and I was just going out there trying to raise the second raise with my business, and the investors that came in and provided us with angel capital did a lot of diligence on us. We had Deloitte on top of us, and it was months of diligence. And I was so worried about the burn rate and not being able to pay my employees that I didn't do any diligence on them. And immediately, after the capital came in, and we had a couple of conversations, then I noticed this discrepancy between the social impact that I was trying to push and the kind of short-term, rapid returns that they were looking for. And I lasted 13 more months. And I exited, I left my baby, my 5-year-old baby, somewhere in Mexico. It's very important that you find the right investors that align with your values or align with your interests, and go for that capital. Capital is available. I think that's one of the other things that I have learned. Capital is out there. You just need to find the right conversation and the right capital type. If it's a revenue share component, if it's a convertible note, if it's kind of straight equity or a grant, and foundations are very slow, I agree. So just make sure you kind of put those notes as you try to raise funds.
Yeah, that's what's exciting about impact and entrepreneurship today, is that at all stages of the company, from very early stage, even to private equity, there are now impact-focused funds all over the country. And the asset class is growing super fast. I mean, $60 billion allocated to impact investing today. That's 50% growth year over year. You know, I was talking to a guy yesterday who runs a fund of funds, which is a large pool of capital that's directed to funds like ours. He's got $12 billion that has been allocated to impact managers, which is stunning. They can't find enough managers for that kind of capital. So there's unbelievable appetite for investing in impact stories out there. But the key is, I think, as Luis said, there has to be that. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is, if you want to go out and raise this money, just you got to figure out if you're aligned with the investors, because the minute you take institutional capital from somebody like me, we have expectations that we have to deliver on to our investors, which means that we're going to be pushing you hard, and to deliver those returns. And look, it may not be the appropriate capital for your company. You may not want to grow as fast. You may want to bootstrap more. And so that alignment is super important, because otherwise these relationships won't be productive.
Well, my final question was going to be about trends and what you're using in your organizations in terms of funding impactful entrepreneurs, but I think we've kind of covered that, and want to make sure that there's enough time for Q&A for the audience. So let's open it up for questions. I don't know if we have a mic, so you're just going to have to be really... Oh, we do have a mic. Okay.
Hi, is this on? Hey. My name's Joe Ewing. I'm actually working on a cooperative co-working space. So an alternative business model to to traditional co-working, where we have a member-owned portion of the overall equity. So I was wondering if you had any connections, or you could point me in the right direction if we were looking for funding for that type of business model, which similar type of social enterprise.
We're actually an investor in Galvanize, so we understand the co-working model, very well, and happy to give you advice about the business model and talk about what might be appropriate. Just grab me afterwards.
Great, thanks.
And then regarding the co-op model, which can be also a little bit tricky, is go to a website called democracycollaborative.org, and they have a whole list of potential financial resources specifically for co-ops.
So Ryan, I'm glad to hear how optimistic you are about funds of funds that are ready and willing to invest in impact. As a freshman fund manager, I'd like that introduction. But on behalf of the crowd, I happen to know how scarce sometimes money seems as an angel investor and someone who introduces many of my mentees to investment. Impact investment, I have found, is even more scarce. And so I would love to hear, at least on the lower levels, what kind of availability you think is really out there. And maybe if you could speak more to the thresholds, because I know, and I hope you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Colorado Impact has a minimum revenue model of about $1 million, and most of the people I speak to are pre-revenue, or they're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range. Could you speak to that, anybody?
Yeah, so our threshold is, we say past proof of concept, which means different things in different industries. I think the earliest deal we've done is about $300K of trailing 12-month revenue. That one was pretty early for us, but we understood that business model extremely well. We had a lot of institutional knowledge in that area, and so that kind of got us over the risk hump. But I think the key for us is that you've got a business model that is generally baked, that we know can scale with our capital, and you've got some customers that we can talk to, just to confirm the product market fit. $1 million is a number we throw out there, but we have done stuff that's earlier than that. But I think only one deal out of 8, I think, has been below $1 million. And we can start to spit out some names. Elizabeth Krause, I don't know if you know her group, Investor Circle, they're doing impact investing at an earlier stage. That's one name I'd throw out there. Honestly, a lot of the early stage investing in impact companies is kind of like what happened for Brooke, which is family offices or individuals that unfortunately it's not organized in a way that's really truly accessible. It's one thing we think a lot about in ways we can improve the investing community here is how do you make it easier for entrepreneurs to go find that capital. That's a tricky part of the market, but there is capital out there.
One website that I would encourage you to check is Enable Impact. EnableImpact.com has a database of potentially, 80% of the market of funds, and they have this very interesting grid that you can select. I'm in Colorado. This is the capital that I'm looking for. This is the focus that I'm trying to move. And show me kind of the list of people that are either on the angel side or trying to just raise funds or provide funds at different stages. So that could be a good one also.
Okay, I think we have time for another question or two.
All right, hi. My name is Carlton Shelley from Sarasota, Florida originally. I'm actually not all the way, I'm not even a full transplant, right? Like, I'm a military officer from out of Fort Hood right now on a fellowship. So, Luis, this question is directed specifically towards you. So I'm real interested in, I don't say the space, but how I got to where I am based on people just taking the time to donate time, money, effort, talents, whatever, into economically deprived people and children specifically, and I'm part of a group that does that now in Sarasota. So my question is, what are key performance indicators, right, or benchmarks that investors are looking for to show that impact when it's not necessarily geared in a investment or an outcome-based model?
Great question, and welcome. I think for us, I can speak about Gary Community Investments. So we have a couple of things that we look at. So it's very important to what Ryan was speaking about, to have at least an intent of how are you going to measure the impact of whatever thing you are running, right? So understanding the population that you're trying to serve, and then really try to extrapolate what data do you need to track to actually prove that impact. So that's one thing. And you can be very early stage, or you can be all the way kind of at a scale magnitude. The other thing that we really look at is, again, management and having the leadership that it's coachable and that it's willing to ask that question so we can have that conversation. We are I would consider Gary Community Investments to be a broad kind of outcome-based investor. So we have done things from the edtech side all the way to affordable housing, all the way to financial literacy. So it's a very kind of on a one-on-one basis. But one of the things that I would always say to the people that are pitching us is, did you go to our website and look at the focus areas that we have and look at the outcomes that we are trying to advance? And if your company or entity aligns with those, then we can have that conversation. The one last thing that I will say, and this is for people that are intrigued about innovation or intrigued about kind of jumping in a space that has incredible returns. And also, it might be not on the short term, but a little bit longer term, we are launching an early childhood challenge or early childhood prize because we are seeing a lot of nonprofits jumping in the space, but not a lot of for-profit kind of either capital or enterprises jumping in the space. And we know the impact that that can have for our society. So check our website, follow us. There's a newsletter and things like that. By the end of October, we'll be launching somewhere between a $1 million or $2 million prize just to provide capital for innovative ideas that are trying to solve some of the issues that we're putting up.
Okay, final question, then I'll close this out. I don't know where the mic is. Go for it.
Me? Yeah. So this could be for investors or companies. How are you gauging, measuring social return on investment, or how are you being measured?
I think how I spoke before around our consciousness metric is really the amount of our score from B Corp. That's how we're measuring it, which is a very intensive process to go through the B Corp certification. It's a rigorous process, so it's looking at governance and it's looking at employees and impact with sourcing. It's looking at, as far as like the sourcing and then what the sourcers are doing. I mean, it's a pretty rigorous process. So that's how we measure. And then I know CIF also has their metrics that then they ask us, but I think you can speak to that.
Yeah, we take two approaches to this. One is portfolio-wide measurement. Most of those metrics are really economic development focused and how you treat your employees. So that's kind of one piece, and it's really easy to measure those across your entire portfolio. We also have this philosophy, though, that every one of these companies has scaled and become really an interesting platform because of their mission, their culture, things that they created. And each of those is different, right? And so for us, it's really important to look at each of these companies on an individual basis and not pick a lot of things, but maybe pick 4 or 5 things that we as a board and as a group are going to measure, just like we would the financials of the company, and make sure that as a board we're also pushing and trying to improve in those areas as well. So there's some portfolio-wide stuff, but also company-specific things that we measure.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank the Commons on Champa. I'd like to thank our panelists and Denver Startup Week. A couple of things you might want to check out as a follow-up to this type of panel. On Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning, there's going to be a session called Access to Flexible Capital Training and Technical Assistance. That might be a nice follow-up to this panel if you're interested. Also, Colorado Impact Days and Initiative is going to be in November 15th through 17th. So if you're looking for funding or looking to get more involved, that might be a way to do so. And if you want to learn more from any of the panelists, they can get in touch with you.
If you go to the info part of our website, you can send a note. We're very responsive to those. So.
Okay.
Similar here. Yes,
Okay.
we have Twitter, Facebook, a couple of different channels. Just go to garycommunity.org.
NotEat.com.
And for entrepreneurs, I would love to, if you have any questions at all or even want to meet, that's how I was able to grow and find these partners, is by networking with other entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to talk with you at any point. You can find my contact on Bhakti Chai or at gitagiving.org.
Great. And Peak Change can be a resource for you for other events in the community that you're looking to attend and how you can participate in the ecosystem, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur. So thanks.